In recent years, the Army has been on the hunt for next-generation aircraft, meant to fill the Armed Scout mission left vacant when the force retired the Kiowa Warrior helicopter. Dubbed the Future Attack Reconnaissance Aircraft, by the start of 2024, more than $2 billion had been spent on the program, and prototypes from major defense companies were getting set for test flights. But in early February, the Army suddenly scrapped the program and announced other changes to its plans, saying it would pursue next-gen unmanned aircraft for the Armed Scout mission in the future. Why the pivot? Defense News' Jen Judson spoke to Daniel Woolfolk about the change.
Jen, the fledgling Future Attack Reconnaissance Aircraft program is no more all of a sudden. What happened?
So this is something that I don't think came as a major surprise. I think we'd heard rumors for a long time that the Future Attack Reconnaissance Aircraft may not make it to the finish line. The Army at the same time was trying to procure an entirely other different aircraft, the Future Long Range Assault Aircraft, or FLRAA. So FLRAA and FARA, the two future vertical lift aircraft, they're trying to procure these two airframes at the same time. It was hard to imagine that that was realistic for budgets, especially as budgets get tighter and tighter for the Army. We knew they were going to have to make a tough decision at some point. I just think it came as a surprise right now that this was the decision that the Army wanted to make, mostly because a competition was already begun between Lockheed Martin's Sikorsky and Bell Textron. They had both built airframes. They were waiting for a specific Army-developed improved turbine engine program engine to get dropped in so they could start flying by the end of this year. But the Army decided to call it quits after spending about $2 billion on the program.
So was that entirely because of funding, or maybe they didn't want to pay for one thing for such a long time and maybe go a different route?
So I think it was a combination of things. I think the Army needs to start making tough decisions on some of their modernization priorities. They had a very ambitious list of things that they wanted to field by 2030 that would be capable of going into multiple domains and also against high-end threats, near-peer adversaries. So when you think about Armed Scout helicopter, for instance, the idea of potentially going the unmanned route is something that the Army, I think, was really starting to think seriously about. You saw Nagorno-Karabakh. You also see what's happening in Ukraine with unmanned aircraft systems. And so I think there was a realization that maybe this doesn't need to be a manned helicopter to fill this mission requirement of an armed scout. It's something that could be very suitable for some of the unmanned aircraft systems coming online. Technology-wise, that's getting better. There's far more UAS out there that we're seeing. Plus, the Army has the Apache attack helicopter, which can also serve the role of a manned helicopter in that mission set as well. It has been doing that along with Shadow unmanned aircraft systems, since the Army retired the Kiowa Warrior back in, I think, about 2014 or so. So there was a combination of, do we really need a manned helicopter? Plus, we don't have much to work with at the budget here, and we have to start making tough decisions.
You mentioned Shadow and the smaller UASs. Right. Those are also being replaced?
That's right. So in addition to deciding to cancel the FARA program, the Army also decided to retire the Shadow. That's not a surprise at all. That was something that they wanted to retire. It was just a matter of time, like how long they were going to wait until it was fully retired. They were already working on the Future Tactical UAS program, which would have replaced Shadows in the brigade combat teams, but now it seems that the Shadow is going to be retired at a more abrupt rate, along with Raven UAS. These are both unmanned aircraft systems that require runways and are just really legacy systems that need to go, especially now that we're seeing just a huge proliferation of high-end UAS now that could replace those. In addition to that, the Army has decided to go forward with another multi-year contract for the UH-60 Black Hawk Mike model, as well as build CH-47 Block 2 F model Chinooks for the active component. They originally were not going to do that. They were only going to field for the special operators. That was a decision made in 2018, actually, because they needed to have funding for future vertical lift, they felt that they could not afford the CH-47 Block II for the active component. And now they're going back and they're going to be fielding that. So they're investing some of this money into current fleet now that they weren't going to. And they're going to invest other money in accelerating the Future Tactical UAS program, as well as a variety of other UAS and air-launched effect programs as well, to both fill the Armed Scout gap, but to, I think, also help industry a bit too.
And the Black Hawk and the Chinook, one's a utility helicopter, one's a cargo helicopter.
Exactly.
They'll remain in those roles. They're not going to fill a gap in their
Exactly. Yeah, they will remain in their roles for as long as they will remain, as the Army decides.
And what have you heard from industry? What are the murmurs there?
Industry is not talking much. You can imagine that there's a bit of an upset to not be able to proceed into a flight test program, a fly-off competition. That was something everyone was looking forward to. Some of the technology, it's really interesting. Sikorsky has been long working on their X2 technology, which is a coaxial rotor blade. That was technology featured in their competitive offering for the FARA program, which they lost to Bell Textron, but it was also part of their FARA offering as well. So I think there's a big question mark. What's going to happen with that X2 technology that they've been developing for well over a decade? And Bell Textron was also working on an entire next generation attack recon helicopter. So it's hard to tell what's going to happen with some of this technology. The Army is going to allow the competitors to close out what they're doing across fiscal year 2024. Some of that technology could be transferred to other programs. The Army explained that last week. It's just unclear exactly what technology that will be. One of the interesting aspects of this, though, is that both of the aircraft were going to take the ITEP engine, which is the Army's engine. It's been under development for a long time. It's been quite delayed. And that's going to go into Blackhawks and Apache helicopters, going to replace their current engines eventually.
Big news, Jen. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.